My name is Victoria Winters. The one person at Collinwood I have reason to fear is Roger Collins. He has discovered that I know his guilty secret. And now Roger has discovered me, alone in the house.
I had to do that, so that you couldn't call out for your little friend to come back. Do you understand? If I take my hand away now, will you promise not to scream? It won't do you any good anyway, you know. We're the only ones in this house. Please don't do anything silly, Vicki. You don't honestly think you could escape from me, do you?
What do you want?
You think I killed Bill Malloy, don't you?
I don't think anything.
If you really think that, you must be petrified with fear right now. Because if I killed him, then I would surely have to kill you too, wouldn't I?
Talking dark shadows, we have made our way up to November of 1966. November, a sweeps month in TV world, even back in 1966. And I feel like the best thing about it being a sweeps month for Dark Shadows is that some stories finally moved, because they've been dragging for a while now. And the first 2 weeks of the month, I was getting tired of the Bill Malloy murder and all of that surrounding story.
Maybe you found Mr. Devlin's pen.
Burke's?
Well, he could have lost it.
Oh, no, I'm sure it's not Burke's. It couldn't be.
Why not?
Because...
Don't you think you better mention it to him just in case? And if he has lost it, I'm sure he'll want it back. These pens are expensive.
That's too bad. It started to rain. We're going to have to make a run for it.
Burke?
Aren't you coming?
I have to make a telephone call.
Now? Can't it wait? We're getting a late start as it is.
No, it can't wait. It's very important.
All right. But there's a phone in the lobby.
I'm in Bangor, Roger. Could you please come up and get me home?
Bangor? You want me to drive all the way to Bangor on a night like this?
I wouldn't ask you if I wasn't so frightened. I think I'm in danger.
What are you talking about?
Burke Devlin.
Devlin? What about him?
Well, I think that he's connected with Bill Malloy's death.
Coming into the month, we focused on Victoria talking to the lawyers of the Collins family, and Victoria is still trying to figure out the woman painted in the picture by Sam, which looks a hell of a lot like Victoria. Sam ends up giving her that portrait, and she shows it to Elizabeth. Elizabeth tries to play it off, and Roger tries to play it off like it doesn't look like Victoria.
Some foundlings, well, they don't want to know where they come from. They're afraid to know.
I'm not afraid, no matter what I find out.
Well, what have you got there?
A surprise. Sam Evans gave it to me. It's a portrait of Betty Hanscom. Do you see a resemblance?
No, I don't really. Do you, Roger?
No, not the faintest.
Well, I do, and so did Maggie, and so did Mr. Evans.
I think they were being kind to you and seeing what you wanted them to see.
Do you really think that? Oh, you're back. Yes. Vicki, where'd you have the portrait done? It looks exactly like you.
Victoria, but then when Carolyn comes in, she thinks it's a portrait of Victoria, kind of proving them wrong that the portrait does indeed look like Victoria. I'm going to talk about more of the stories here in a second, but I think my overall opinion of Dark Shadows, they still sprinkle in the supernatural elements, but it's kind of feeling disjointed from the rest of the show to me.
This is Mrs. Johnson, our new housekeeper.
I know. We already met.
Oh?
Oh, it was at the hotel coffee shop. I often go there for a cup of coffee.
What do you want to work here for?
David, you're being very rude.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't mean it the way it sounded. Now, I'll just get unpacked and be right down.
Fine.
What do you see in those rooms?
If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. But I've seen things. Things that if you knew about them, they'd scare you.
Oh, you're just trying to frighten an old lady.
Miss Johnson,
Yes?
what were you asking the boy questions for?
Questions? I was just making
We
conversation.
don't like people asking questions around here. You better remember that.
Well, I told you I was just talking to the boy. Are you giving me orders? I take my orders from Mrs. Stoddard.
I'm not ordering you. I'm warning you. Don't ask any more questions.
David,
I scared you, didn't I?
you certainly did. Who is it? Who is it? Who's in there? Who's in there?
So I still feel like the show at this point in time is trying to find itself. We all know it would eventually find itself when old boy comes along. But right now I feel like they are just trying to slowly sprinkle in more supernatural elements. The network, who knows how much interference the networks had at this point in time. We know how much they've had over the last 3 decades. But at this point, the supernatural stories are starting to feel a little bit disjointed away from the rest of the show. Like they've tied in the eeriness feeling of the show a lot. But it kind of just feels like they throw in little supernatural elements here and there, because we've seen a ghost at one point, but there hasn't been much follow through. We see Miss Johnson hears the sobbing from the basement. She started working for the Collins family to kind of spy on it for Burke. I like that subplot. I like that Miss Johnson's kind of also an outsider in the Collin house, just like Victoria in a way. But yeah, they follow back up with the sobbing in the basement, and she went looking in the basement and of course found David there, who's always in the most weirdest spots, because they continue to play up David as this, both a problem child, but one that has a connection to the afterlife in a way. But then we also had like an urn falling at one point. So I just feel like they throw in a lot of randomness, and we'll see how much they follow up on some of this. I know they will on some, because I've seen a lot of Barnabas's first year on the show until it gets to a storyline that I'm not that high on, which will probably be an unpopular opinion, but maybe I'll be more high on it now when I watch it, because I watched this a long time ago when I was younger, and it used to like air on Sci-Fi in the mornings. Let's go through some more of these storylines. There's this point where Elizabeth tells Carolyn Carolyn about the true love of her life and how she took him for granted and lost him, and that was kind of like tying in Carolyn in the way she kind of treats Joe and takes Joe for granted. She tried to reconcile with Joe, but they got in this big argument.
Okay, it's not that funny. Why did you call me tonight and ask me to bring you here?
Because I wanted to see you. Because I'm sorry I got mad at you.
You got sorry after the last time we had a fight, after I said no to that promotion at the cannery. Then you turned right around, got mad at me all over again.
Well, that was different. Do you expect me to approve of your dates with other girls?
Oh, Carolyn, now you know there's nothing between Maggie Evans and me.
Maybe I do. Maybe that's why I apologized. Maggie, hi. Hello, Mr. Evans. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Maggie.
Well, my daughter decided to accompany me on my nightly visit. Well, I'm surprised to see so many people out on a cold, blowy night like this.
I think cold, blowy nights are the best nights for having fun.
Oh, you could be right. Well, if you'll excuse us.
Oh, won't you join us?
Well,
No, please. We have plenty of room.
Maggie?
We don't want to intrude. She went there with a friend. A very intimate friend.
Anyone I know?
Burke Devlin.
Burke.
You didn't tell me that.
The subject never came up.
Well, what's she doing in Bangor with Burke Devlin?
I don't know. Ask Vicki.
Well, let's dance.
Not right now, Joe. I'm not in the mood.
I am. Come on, let's dance. You must take me for a prize sap.
What's that supposed to mean?
You don't think I know why you called me tonight?
I told you why. Several times to be exact. Because I wanted to see you.
You're lying.
What?
I said you were lying. You called me for the same reason you called me before, because you're jealous of Vicki and Burke.
And after that argument, Joe took her home and came back to talk to Maggie. So they're still kind of playing up that little triangle between Joe and Carolyn and Maggie. But we also have the other triangle still being played up between Victoria, Burke, and Maggie. So we just have Carolyn just in both of the triangles right now, which is kind of her main point in the story.
Well, why don't you tell me some more about your boat, Joe? The one you plan to buy.
You're a nice girl, Maggie Evans.
What brought that on?
Well, you haven't asked me what happened between Carolyn and myself.
Well, I figured you'd tell me if you wanted me to know.
You're right.
Do you mind one question?
What's that?
Why did you come back?
For a brush-up?
A what?
The lesson you were giving me the other evening. I need to brush up on my knowledge of seacraft. Come on now, Professor. See if you can do this now. Name for me all the sails of a full-rigged ship under all plainsail.
Okay. 1 flying jib, 2 jib, 3 fore topmast staysail, 4 foresail, 5 foregaff topmast.
One of the reasons that the first half of November was kind of a fail to me is that the whole pen drama just got a little too much for me. I cannot say that was like engrossing television because it wasn't. So basically there was a pen that Roger had that was found at the scene of the crime, but Roger had given it to Burke. So at one point Victoria, finding out that Burke had a pen just like that, starts to suspect that maybe Burke killed Bill Malloy, and that and she's afraid to be with him because Burke took Victoria out of town to talk to the lawyers of the Collins family. But then we find out that Roger really had the pen. That Roger, it was too much for me. The pen drama that went on for like 3 weeks. I didn't like it. All right, so finally, the last 2 weeks of November is where the stories finally start to heat up some. We have Victoria talking to Sam about Roger and the whole pen drama and Bill Malloy's death and Bill Malloy's ghost. And when she's leaving that conversation with Sam, she's almost hit by a car. Vicki suspects someone is trying to kill her because of maybe that is Roger. A lot of this month was playing up Roger's dark side, and that maybe Roger was the one that killed Bill Malloy. And Roger eventually has to have a confrontation with Victoria, where Roger tells Victoria that Roger admits to Victoria that he indeed found Bill Malloy's body at the bottom of the cliff, but he says when he got there, Bill Malloy was already dead. When Victoria tells Burke that she thinks someone tried to kill her, Burke suspects Roger. He goes to the sheriff. The sheriff confronts Roger, and then Burke and the sheriff later find Roger tampering with evidence. Once again, the pen. But Roger eventually kind of has an alibi for not being involved with the hit and run on Victoria. So they also maybe suspect Sam, because Sam was the last person with Victoria before the almost hit and run. By the way, she was not hit by a car. It just almost was hit by a car. But then later, when Victoria is visiting the old house, where the most haunted part of Collinwood, she runs into Matthew.
What are you doing?
Oh, Matthew, you startled me.
What are you doing, Miss Winters?
I have to use your phone. It's urgent.
Why?
I have to call the sheriff.
What do you want with the sheriff?
I haven't got time to tell you now. I'll tell you later. I have to get him up here right away. Someone tried to kill me.
Kill you?
It was in front of the old house, one of those stone urns. It nearly fell on me. It nearly killed me.
Yeah.
Well, that car that tried to run me down, that wasn't my imagination.
Probably that was an accident, too. The driver didn't see you.
He saw me all right. He came right at me.
If he didn't see it, we almost hit you. You can't see much past your headlights on a country road at 8 in the evening.
What did you say?
I said it was probably an accident. What were you doing wandering around a lonely stretch of road at that time of night? You should know better.
How did you know what time it happened?
You mentioned it.
No, I didn't. I said the car tried to run me down last night. I'm not looking at you in any particular way.
What you're thinking isn't true.
I'm not thinking anything.
You think I killed Miss Malloy?
No!
You're gonna go to the sheriff. You're gonna tell him that.
No, I'm not.
You're right, you're not. I'm gonna let you.
Stop it! Let me go! Let me go!
I can't. Not now.
Matthew and her have this confrontation where Matthew is saying he had to kill someone and says it was an accident that he had to kill someone, and then he is indeed talking about Bill Malloy. Matthew being a caretaker of Collinwood. I don't know if I've talked a lot about the character of Matthew too much. He's kind of like a slow character. I feel like he's not good looking. He's big. He's kind of like a Hunchback of Notre Dame type character that I'm getting from Matthew. He doesn't look good. He's weird. He's kind of slow, and probably more than kinda. So in this confrontation with Victoria, he admits that he accidentally killed Bill Malloy. They had an argument on the cliff because Matthew was upset that Bill Malloy was kind of targeting the Collins family. You know, Matthew was very loyal to the Collins family. They had a bit of a fight and a struggle, and then Bill Malloy fell off the cliff. And so Matthew feels like he's going to have to kill Victoria now because Victoria just knows too much. Matthew was the one that tried to kill Victoria in the car even, and now he feels like he might have to kill her again. But then Elizabeth walks in, and Victoria tells Elizabeth that Matthew is responsible for killing Bill Malloy.
You may trust her, but I don't. She's not leaving my sight.
All right, then. We'll all go to the main house together.
Why?
Because we have to talk, make plans.
Why can't we talk here?
Because I prefer to go to the main house.
Why, Miss Stoddard?
Oh, why does it matter?
Who's up there?
Just Mrs. Johnson and David.
That's all?
That's all.
You're
Come along, Matthew.
You're real anxious to get me back that house. Why?
I'm not anxious.
Who's up there? The sheriff? Did you call him to look for her?
No.
A bad liar, Mister.
Matthew.
Never lied before. You should have done it now! You should have done it!
So I'm glad that we finally have who really killed Bill Malloy, and now Matthew, of course, feels like he has to go on the run, even though Victoria's trying to tell him that it was an accidental death. He just needs to tell the sheriff that. But Matthew's going to try and hide out at the old house. And they did a good job of making me feel sorry for Matthew at the old house, that he's just kind of alone and that he feels bad about all of this.
I want to help you.
Why should you want to help me?
Because I know what happened. And I know it was all my father's fault.
What are you talking about?
My father killed Mr. Malloy.
It's not a nice thing to say about your father.
We work together. We'll find evidence.
Evidence?
All you have to do is stay here until I find it.
Expect me to stay here where I'm not safe?
You're safe in this old house. I'm the only one that ever comes here. Nobody else does.
You serious about wanting to help me?
Sure I am.
So overall, it ended up being a strong month for Dark Shadows. It started rough. I thought this was actually going to be the worst month so far after the first 2 weeks. But by the last 2 weeks, the last 2.5 weeks, they really pulled it all together by finally moving stories, thankfully. I like the direction we're going with Matthew. We finally know he is the one that murdered Bill Malloy, and now he's going to hide out at the old house, which could make room for more supernatural things happening at the old house. Of course, David will be involved with that as well. We then have David mentioning his mother, and I know his mother is about to be coming at some point very soon. That will lead to another story. I won't give away too much, just in case someone happens to be watching along with me. So yeah, the show did a good job of painting Roger as maybe the real murderer. I mean, they kind of alluded it as Burke at times too, even though Burke had no motivation to kill Bill Malloy. But now we're finding out that it's Matthew because he's loyal to the Collins family, and he was upset with Bill Malloy for coming after them, and then that was an accidental death. So I like that. It solves that crime, and now we'll see the aftermath of that revelation coming to light. I actually think for a while we're still going to see the supernatural kind of just sprinkled in here and there. I don't think they go full supernatural yet until old Barnabas comes. But for now, this was a good month for the show. It's back up in the C+ range. I gave it a 77 grade. So that brings up the average for Dark Shadows to a 76.83, slightly up from a 76.8. I know the next supernatural story is probably going to drag too because I've seen it before. It's the last supernatural story before we get to Barnabas, I'm pretty sure. But I still think we're in for an interesting December for sure. We'll see how January, February, and March become. But as for December, I don't know what to expect because I don't know exactly when the next story starts. But I'm glad we're getting away from the Bill Malloy story. I liked it when it started. They set it up very well. But then it just dragged for 2 months, and I'm just glad we know who actually killed Bill Malloy.
Where have you been?
I just went out for a minute.
You deliberately disobeyed me.
I know, Aunt Elizabeth, but I had a good reason to go out.
What was it?
To feed the birds.
I don't like you to lie to me, David.
I'm not lying.
Matthew keeps the bird seed locked in the tool shed. You couldn't be feeding any birds.
Well, I didn't say I fed them. When I went down there to get it, I found the tool shed locked, and I came back here for the key. You believe me, don't you?
I believe you deliberately disobeyed me. Take him upstairs.
Come on, David.
Wait a minute. Have you heard anything about Matthew?
No. The sheriff called and said that there's been no trace of him. He seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth.
That's funny.
What's so funny about it?
I just think it's funny. The way somebody can vanish right off the face of the earth.